Hi there, welcome to week 1 of our online learning. We are going to be reteaching or going over trigonometry again, just to reiterate some of the important facts there and then how to set them up if you forgot over this stretch of days we've had off. So we start with right triangles. This one is a ABC triangle. And trigonometry is used to find missing side lengths within these right triangles. So the first thing we want to look at is the three trig functions: sine, cosine, and tangent. These are abbreviations for the long words. This is how you typically write them. This is how you typically see them. You don't ever really see them spelled out. So these three trig functions use different sides of the triangle based on what angle you have information about. So typically our trig functions are written as an equation that looks like this. This theta is a Greek letter. It's used to represent an angle measure. And then our opposite and our hypotenuse are just sides of the triangle. So depending on what angle you're looking at, this is going to tell you what side is opposite, what side is adjacent, what side is the hypotenuse. So if we're looking from angle A's perspective, we'll just redraw that real quick. That will help us. We'll be able to write on it. So if I'm looking from here, angle A, I want to identify what sides are going to be opposite. So if it's across from the angle, it is the opposite. That would be down here. If it is across from the 90-degree angle, which would be over here, that is called the, you guessed it, that is the hypotenuse. And last, the one that is always right next to my angle is the adjacent. So, adjacent, ADJ. If you switch angle perspective, so say I wanted to look from angle C's perspective, I'll redraw it one more time here. So if I'm looking from this angle here, the side furthest or across from my angle is going to be no longer this one down here. It's going to be the one here. So this is my opposite side this time. The hypotenuse stays in the same location every time, no matter what. It's always across from that 90-degree angle. And again, the side that runs right into the angle or is adjacent right next to the angle. So once we have our sides labeled, then we can go ahead and start setting up our ratios. So the first thing I want to look at is just identifying what those ratios would look like before we actually get into solving any type of equations. So example number 1. I want to look at a right triangle, ABC. I'll give some values here to these side lengths. First question is identify the trig ratios. So if I want to look at the sine of A, that tells me I'm going to start at angle A, which is up top here. And if you look back at the top, sine function uses the opposite side and the hypotenuse. So if I'm looking from angle A, opposite from here would be 24 over the hypotenuse, which is going to be 26. That would be the trig ratio there. If I looked at the tangent of angle B, So angle B is here. Tangent uses opposite and adjacent. So opposite from angle B would be 10 over the adjacent, which is 24. So sometimes you have a hard time remembering these trig function ratios, which one goes with what. How do I remember what side goes with where? So good acronym we talked about before in class was SOHCAHTOA. And I told you a little story about the Indian warrior that was named SOHCAHTOA. Sometimes people assign words so they remember how to spell this. So some people say some old horse caught another horse, taking oats away. Just helps you to spell out these three little words here. The letters represent, up at the top, sine, opposite, hypotenuse. It tells you which order it goes in. So this is a big help. You might try to memorize that if you haven't already done so. Super important. So now we will actually get into solving some equations here. So we'll look at example number 2. I want to solve for x. So given a triangle, I got a 41, and then let's see, I'll give you a 13 down here, and we'll look for this. All right, so I am looking for x. Well, this looks nothing like what we just did. So then you think, wow, where do I even go from here? So there's a few steps, simple setup. So the first thing you want to do is label the sides. So I'm looking from which angle? Well, what angle is the only one I know any information about? I know information about angle A, which is 41 degrees. So it tells me I want to be thinking about this angle at the top. That's the angle that I want to be looking at. So based on angle A, what side would the 13 be on? Well, the 13 would be my opposite. My x here would be my, you guessed it, that is the hypotenuse. And then if you have major OCD or you just like everything to be complete and in order, you can go ahead and label that third one, which is going to be my adjacent. So if you do happen to label all three sides, you want to then make sure to circle or highlight the sides you have information about. So I will take my trusty highlighter and I'm going to go ahead and circle that X there, and then I'm going to circle my 13 here. So it tells me I'm going to be using those two sides. So the next step you want to do is identify the trig ratio. So am I going to use sine? Am I going to use cosine? Or am I going to use tangent? Question mark. So think back to our previous page here. I'll just go ahead and show that one real quick again. Remember our SOHCAHTOA. Which one uses the two that we highlighted? Well, we highlighted the opposite and the hypotenuse. So that would be sine. So I know I am going to use the sine function now. Sine, I'm going to circle sine there. And then next thing you want to do is go ahead and set up an equation. And then you want to go ahead and solve it once you've set it up. Okay, so solving the equation that we haven't even wrote down yet, but here it goes. So sine, I know I'm using sine, sine opposite hypotenuse, SOA, that's what it should look like. So S stands for sine. What is my angle? Well, again, I only know one of the angles here, and it's going to be this one, 41. So sine 41 is equal to O. O stands for opposite, so that's the one that goes on the top, over the H, which stands for the hypotenuse, which in this case is an X. So I have set up an equation. Now I just need to solve this equation. That is the tricky part. So you have to think about here, how am I going to get that variable X in this case? How am I going to get that variable all by itself? So am I going to multiply this to get rid of it? I'm going to divide. Think about what the opposite of dividing by X would be. That would be multiplying. So whatever I do to the right, I do have to do to the left. I multiply both by X. That cancels here. So now I have X sine 41 equals 13. Well, that didn't quite help because X is still not alone. So I want to go ahead and sine 41, it's timesing with the X. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by the sine 41. That will get rid of it. So now I have X by itself equals 13 over sine 41. So in order to type this on your calculator, you are simply going to press 13 divided by 41, the sign button, and then the equal sign. Once you type that in, you should get an answer that is 19.8. 19.8. Next thing you want to do is, what if my equation doesn't have an X on the bottom? What if the X is on the top? Well, we will look at that example number 3. Sorry if I'm going a little fast. I'm just trying to get you guys, I know you have a lot of assignments to do, and you'd probably rather not be sitting in front of a computer screen for 5 hours a day, which I can't really blame you, but it's what we're left with to do for now. So next, solve for y. I'll just give it a different variable in this case, so it's not x again. So solving for x, y, solving for y. So triangle, okay, there is our triangle. We want to solve for y. So what would that look like this time? Same steps again, label the sides. This time we are looking from angle C because that is where our angle is, 33. So the y would be on the opposite this time. And the 20 is on my adjacent side. This would be my hypotenuse. If you like to label all three, go for it. So then if you do label all three, I do recommend that you circle the two that you have information about. Notice there's no numbers or letters there, so I never would circle something, but that just has a hypotenuse or a label on it. So once I've circled it, then I want to think about, is it so, ka, or is this a TOA case? Well, O and an A, that would be TOA. TOA stands for tangent, opposite, adjacent. So I am going to go ahead and choose TOA, and I want to set up my equation. So tangent of the angle, my angle C is 33 degrees, is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. So this time my variable, or the letter, is on the top. So that tells me it is a little different than example number 2. In order to solve this equation for y, I just simply multiply both sides by the 20. That would cancel out on the right. I would have left my variable y equals 20, 10, 33. So this time it is multiplying, like I said. So on your calculator, instead of dividing this time, you're just going to simply multiply. So it's 20 times 33, tangent, and then that equal sign. So once you get this typed on your calculator, you should get 12.988. If you're rounding to the nearest tenth, that would in turn round me up to 13. And that is it. So you should have 3 questions for your assignment this week. Questions 1, 2, and 3. They follow the examples which I have shown you here. So go ahead and watch the video again, pause it, ask questions. Email, remind, you can call me, my number is listed on the website there, and then if you want to video conference, we could set that up as well if you'd like to video conference with me. All right guys, enjoy your week.